All right, people. So we are getting closer and closer to AEW's Full Gear, which my predictions for the show should be coming out this Saturday. Considering that this Saturday is going to mark 1 week before AEW's Full Gear. But tonight we had MJF versus Daniel Garcia to open up the show. This was for the AEW World Championship, and this match was kind of last minute. Garcia, after beating Trent Beretta on Rampage, he called out MJF, so that's how the match came about. But despite losing, this was a nice little showing for Daniel Garcia. I thought this was a nice little opener between both men, but obviously MJF was going to win the match, but he was trying to show respect to Daniel Garcia after the match, but obviously the boys pulled him back and was like, "Nah, dude, like you're not shaking his hand." So we had that, but anyways, we had a Hikaru Shida and Tony Storm little sit down contract signing with Tony Schiavone, and I kind of like the story that they're playing into this. You can pretty much say that Tony Storm, the reason why she is the way she is right now, is because of Hikaru Shida. So I like the little story they're playing into that match, but that was that. Um, you had Sting and Darby Allin take on this team called the Outrunners. They said on commentary that this was the first time. I don't know how many years. I don't know how many years, but they said it's like been a long time since Sting has done a show in Portland, which is insane to me. But yeah, Sting and Darby got the win. Just some momentum heading into Full Gear, and a nice little pop for the Stinger. So I had no problems with it whatsoever. Now, to me, this was match of the night. This was Swerve Strickland and Penta El Zero Miedo. I said it in the past. They put Penta in these matches. They give him all the pyro and shit, even though he's gonna lose. But I thought he put up a nice little showing against Swerve, and this was a good match, man. This was a really good match. Again, to me, this was match of the night. Hangman attacked Swerve after the match. I'm actually looking forward to Hangman and Swerve too. I think that's going to be one of in my opinion, one of the most interesting matches heading into the show. But I'll get into more of that, when I do my predictions. But yeah, so we had that spot there, and then of course we had a backstage segment with Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega talking about their match, the 6-man tag. But the Young Bucks came out. The Young Bucks, they're tired of this. They're tired of this, and so they challenged Kenny and Jericho to a match at Full Gear. And the stipulation is if Jericho and Kenny win, then that number one title shot that the Young Bucks have, it's going over to Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega. But if the Young Bucks win, the Young Bucks, well, obviously they still keep their title shot, but the Golden Jets, this alliance, this team between Chris Jericho and Kenny, is no longer a thing. So we had that little segment. So obviously those guys are going to compete at Full Gear, so that should be something. Uh, I do want to move on to Samoa Joe versus Keith Lee. This is for the Ring of Honor World TV Championship, and around this time, Samoa Joe had just became the longest reigning TV champion. I think over 650 days, something like that. But Samoa Joe won the match, and it was a solid match for me. Samoa Joe vacated the championship. He just said, like, "Look, man, like, I want the world championship. That's my end game. That's my goal." And you can look at this and be like, "Oh, this is not good," because this dude just vacated the championship after all these days of holding it. But at the same time, it's like Ring of Honor should not be on AEW. Ring of Honor and AEW should be their own, like, separate. Like, just because one guy, the same guy who owns AEW is owning Ring of Honor, don't mean you need to put two and two together. Keep them separate. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, NXT is a part of WWE, but NXT and the main roster are separate. Like, so hopefully they start moving towards that. But you had Red Velvet versus Julia Hart. This was really nothing. This was your typical AEW women's match. Julia Hart got the win. We did see RJ City though backstage with Mariah May. I think that's her name. And I didn't. I don't like. I never really. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I'm gonna be truthful. I never really watched any of her matches. I've seen clips on social media. She has come from Stardom, and one of the main reasons why she wanted to sign with AEW was because of Tony Storm. So there you have it there. But kind of going back to Red Velvet and Julia Hart, now thinking about it, we saw Sky Blue coming out, and she was kind of going face to face with Julia Hart, and I don't know how she was with Chris Statlander. Does this mean she's about to go back to Julia Hart, or maybe this whole thing of her, Julia Hart, and Sky Blue being enemies was kind of a trap for both Willow Nightingale, who escaped, thankfully, and Chris Statlander. But the main event, Mark Briscoe versus Jay White. Yeah, this, no offense, this was predictable. This was a very predictable main event. Everybody knew who was going to win this match, obviously. I don't even need to say his name. But so the ending was that. And overall, this was a really good episode of AEW Dynamite. Like, I'll go out on a limb and say this was better than last week's episode. So very good on that. And the build for Full Gear continues. So apologize for going a little bit long here, but I hope y'all enjoyed my November 8th edition of AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite. So I will see y'all whenever. So yeah.